Well then, let's talk about egos. Strictly speaking, egos are a lot more difficult to power creep compared to IDs. In having only 3 things each ego has access to for the most part, a lot of them are quite stable in usage. 4 attack power down is still one of the most unmatched debuffs to this day, but there's quite a few borderline useless egos out there, or ones that make you warp your gameplay hard trying to get usage out of them. All that to say, while power creep has inevitably hit egos, it ain't to the same extent as IDs, when there's a literal 10 times difference in pure outputs. Egos all have far more unique uses than just kill it's dead, at least. Anyhow, if you haven't already seen the ID power creep video, I'd recommend watching that first before coming back, but otherwise, we'll be tackling these in release order, but not exactly at release capacity. I only started during Season 4, so this will be less a retrospective and more a post-mortem. From memory, this means that the major additions will be Fred spins going from 3 to 4, with some even at 5, alongside changes to how sanity works in the form of 75% head flips at launch to 95% these days. First off, what are egos? Aside from the acronym standing for Extermination of Geometrical Organ, usually it's some form of self-actualization made manifest, in lore at least. In-game for Limbus Company, these act as a sideboard that can be accessed at any time when slotting your skills. Egos here can be slotted into your dashboard if you have enough ego resources, that of which being generated from skill usage. Essentially, it's a way of cashing out your history of attacks for big flashy bonus effects. Egos themselves have 3 effects each, typically speaking. There are exceptions, but those currently number about 4 to 5. There's the Awakening, the skill you get for coughing up the base price to slot the ego. The Corrosion, a different awakening that costs 50% more resources, but can also hit friendlies if activated from corroding. And finally, Ego Passives, these being a wide variety of beneficial effects that trigger after an ego has been used for the first time in an encounter. For the exceptions, we're looking at 2-stage awakening egos, which have 2 different awakenings. The first usually being cheaper and acting as setup, the second activation often being conditional or more expensive. Next is synchronization egos, for lack of a better way of putting it. These are the sort of egos that grant unique effects to specific IDs that make use of them, either heavily buffing their capabilities or speeding up their existing engines. Beyond there, all of these come in differing risk levels: Zayn, Tef, Hey, and Wav, in that order. This classification reflects the abnormality we are borrowing power from. As compared to self-actualization made manifest, the sinners borrow their power from abnormalities, not unlike librarians and ego pages. Each risk level up is an increase in resource cost as well as power, with some weird exceptions here and there. It's also a change in resistances offered. Compared to IDs, these are far less standardized, with some pathetic WAVs existing and some ungodly Zayans too. Typically though, Zayans are cheap, high-utility affairs, worse at clashing and damage. Tef tends to be debuffs that are okay at clashing and can have some damage. He tends to be damage monsters with a mixed bag of utility and debuffs. WAV are usually ungodly amounts of damage or some kind of super enabler for more degenerate strategies. These are exceedingly powerful for the most part and come with a price tag to match in ego resources a majority of the time. Weirdly, they're a bit of a mix when it comes to clashing in the end. Again, while these are typical of each risk level, there will be many exceptions to the rules or norms. Sin damage resistances are also adjusted after ego use, often giving an entirely new spread of sin damage resistances to a sinner. This will always start combat as your Sinner Zayn resistances, and then be adjusted to the last used ego's sin resistances. Last to mention before going in full throttle is sanity cost. All egos burn away a Sinner's sanity to make use of. This is a flat cost subtracted on use, after a clash, or immediately when used unopposed. This does make them far more difficult to roll heads on due to said sanity loss before the coins are flipped. This eats a lot into their consistency, but at the very least, as it processes after the clash, you'll clash at higher SP, and even on clash win, gain SP before losing said SP. For some egos, the cost is even staggered out over multiple turns as to not suddenly burn all possibility of flipping heads away in one go. The SP cost does creep up on you though. That said, let's look at the base stuff, everyone's Zayans, the stuff that comes with your accounts, the surprisingly good stuff personal to each sinner with heavy story relevance. Heck, a good chunk of them get used in cutscenes throughout the main story. As they're all Zay and E.G.O, they're quite cheap to fuel and available pretty much at all times. I'll quickfire these out since I'd rather not hit a 1 hour runtime like the last video, so it's a editing E.G.O here. Very obviously this script lasted more than an hour. Yisung's Crow's Eye View is a soft +5 speed split between 3 haste and 2 bind, as well as a nice 2 attack power down. An exceedingly good buff and debuff package for cheap, close to spammable even with the right setup. This thing is core for use even these days. There is however one unfortunate drawback in the passive, which has only gotten worse over time. This being free self-bind when hit in return for a 20% boost to weak or fatal damage. This is decidedly rather shite, with unbreakable coins being far more prevalent these days. Personally, I value the ability to clash at all, and this can reduce Yisung's speed to non-clashing speeds. That said, this is the premier utility everything should be compared against. False Representation Emitter is your first glimpse at Sanity Manipulation E.G.Os. It grants a total of 48 SP after attack, and otherwise can AoE with free attack weight. Afterwards, it's handing around SP heal efficiency with that passive when enemies are staggered. Not the craziest passive, but the main awakening effect is very strong. Unfortunately, this comes with a 6 E.G.O resource cost, making it a more expensive Zayn. While not as insane as some of False's future Sanity Manipulation E.G.Os, this is one she will pretty much always have access to. Don's La Sangre de Sancho is a more effective clasher, with positive offense level and a 26 roll to throw out. While it ain't gonna do much damage, it's cheap, clashes effectively, stims bleed, and offers some healing. Later on, it also offers a flat 3 HP heal. It's okay. Does what it needs to do for cheap, but without any real lasting effects. Ryoshu's Forest for the Flames is one of the strongest Zayn E.G.O out the gate, rolling higher than Don's at a 28 and being just as cheap. Ryoshu gets to inflict a sticky 2 fragile next turn and 6 burn. This amplifies outgoing damage for everyone on target since it is next turn, meaning she will benefit from the damage the following turn as well. Aside from that, its passive is okay in unfocused encounters, offering a additional 5% damage for each unit killed, but would you ever really use this in an unfocused encounter? Nonetheless, still a bloody staple. Musou's Chains of Others. This is the boss-killing boogeyman. Not for turboing up Musou himself, but more so for letting everyone win their clashes. 4 attack power down is complete and utter filth. 5 bind is insane. Though it partially mirrors these effects back onto Musou, it is nothing that he can't handle in getting 2 protection, up to 5 with that passive. Being this cheap is a crime, and very few bosses will be able to shrug off losing 4 attack power. As it is next turn, his speed in applying this matters not, allowing everyone to benefit much like Ryoshu's. Absolutely a staple in any focused boss encounter. Honga's Land of Illusions is a more expensive AoE syncing applier that refunds its SP cost. It's a bit of an ugly duckling, I suppose, but the passive is quite good in offering some hassle-free sanity restoration. The spam ability does make it kinda stand out, if it weren't an ungodly 5 gloom and 1 lust cost. Heathcliff's Body Sack is one of the first to have direct synergy with one of his launch IDs. Otherwise, it's a cheap set of extensive self-buffs that clashes reasonably well. 3 haste and up to 3 attack power up is already quite strong even by modern standards. Not to mention how well that passive does in unfocused encounters, pumping up his haste and attack power as well. Early on, this would have been a +6 attack power stim, which on paper is whack as all hell, but in needing kills would be far from any kind of practical to rely on. The main appeal is more so that haste. Making a good assortment of Heathcliff's faster is surprisingly useful for some of his stronger debuffs and skills, else it makes him a damn good clasher in post. Ishmael's Snag Harpoon. This one has an unusual targeting mechanism, always going for the rearmost. 6 bind is bloody insane. All but the fastest of enemies will be dropped to 0, and even those fast ones would potentially get slammed with unopposed hell the turn after this. Notably, it has a freebie Tremor Burst. Not super useful, but funny that it exists. Beyond there, Compulsion is one hell of a buff. Plus Clash power is like getting +6 offense level in a Clash. However, losing 2 more Clash power isn't exactly a good thing in comparison. Being a bit of a win more is very good in Limbus's Sanity Snowball though. Rodya's What Is Cast makes her into something of a special snowflake. The Awakening clashes well and is supposed to do extra damage on higher HP foes. It's supposed to inflict some bleed, then make her more sane. Quite a bit more sane in getting +3 sanity heal efficiency the turn after, and likewise -3 sanity loss efficiency, pushing her average clash win to a +15 or so SP. This largely benefits just her and no one else, making it not the most usable in later content. Still a cheap clasher though. Sinclair's branch of knowledge has the potential to clash stupid high at a 29, with positive offense level to boot. Where it gets particularly strange though is the coin condition. Landing a heads hit is a huge 12 rupture stim alongside an attack power up. However, comes at doubling the SP cost of the E.G.O essentially, whereas if it hits on a tails, we're looking at a full SP refund and a protection stack. It's a rather wishy-washy E.G.O thus far, and the passive doesn't exactly hide that. Unstable gives him damage ups each time coins alternate. Unfortunately, it also loses him SP. On a very specific Season 1 ID that shall grip, this is an amazing E.G.O. In fact, it's borderline busted. It's just unfortunate that negative coin Sinclair IDs don't exactly exist beyond that one. Otis's to Paphos Maphos is the opposite of Rodya's base in some ways. We get execution damage instead, some rupture and on-kill damage up. The passive is quite nice if you don't get hits. At a baseline, that is 30% more damage after enough time without getting hits. Unfortunately, post-Canto 6, this is shot in the leg by unbreakable coins. Otherwise, an okay, somewhat selfish E.G.O that gives Otis a source of damage up. Gregor's Suddenly One Day is a high clashing RNG status cannon. He can stim any of the 5 main keyword debuff statuses by 10 with this thing. The passive just makes it more difficult to die while causing an enemy and ally to lose SP in a worse fashion. All of that to say, while we have some irreplaceable staples, we also have some stuff which only sees the light of day if we're desperately in need of something that clashes higher than mid-20s. Even then, some of these get to clash higher than mid-20s and do their gimmick too. Notables here remain as Crow's Eye and Chains of Others, since they actively help you murder bosses and punch above your weight. Forest for the Flames is just easy extra damage, and Representation Emitter is a sanity stim and further manipulation. The rest either live as personal buffs or are hongers. That is to say, the start of our sideboard with everyone's personal E.G.Os ain't too bad by any stretch of the imagination. As not all sinners have Zayn replacements, a good chunk of fellas kinda just have to live with these. Even then, not all of the replacements are equally good either. Moving along though, let's talk about that launch lineup. We had a few Battle Pass exclusives and standard fares. There was a shockingly high amount of E.G.Os dropped on launch. Heck, we actually got so many staples here now looking at it. I'll cover these in batches, but probably the most notable of these are the 4th match Flames. All of these have recently gotten a Fredspin 5. I'll cover them at Fredspin 4 for now. Once we get to Season 7, we'll go over their new iterations. Yi-Sung's is rather pathetic. It has good attack weight at 5, but realistically only works as a sudden +10 burn stim if you even hit heads. The Corrosion is a negative coin for a tiny bit more power, nothing to write home about. In past, that negative coin would have probably been better thanks to heads flipping at 75%, but otherwise kinda useless now. The passive is some small measure of burn, but requires Wrath Resonance to do anything at all, once per skill. A bit of a shite starting line, isn't it? The nearest comparable is Land of Illusions from Hongers, and even that refunds your SP to use. This one is a sad slap 5 guys. Rodya has more utility in several ways. Most notable is that high-ass 38 negative coin. Absolutely insane out the gate. Couple that with free Wrath Fragile too, and we've got something cooking at least. Healing for burn on defeated foe isn't the worst, but an A-resin of Wrath to do so is dubious at best. The Corrosion doesn't hit as hard, but spreads out the love to 5 targets instead of 3, having a 30% amp on Wrath honestly isn't the worst thing and has been used to great effect before. Put a pin in this one and the above one for Season 7 to see how far they have to pump to get things to modern standards. Meanwhile, Roshu's one is stupid good at Fredspin 4 still. This was common for me to slot even before Fredspin 5. Skill power against burning targets up to 100% extra damage, heck on kill attack power. This thing is a bit of a monster already, but it also has a passive that offers +4 final power to every 4th skill she uses. Roshu having a bunch of assist attacks and extra attacks generally makes this stupid easy to fulfill these days. Not so much back then, but now it's pretty damn filthy. All that with 4 burn on Awakening and 4 when the passive procs. This thing is disgustingly good, and they'd eventually Fredspin 5 it. The Corrosion rolls a 42 by default with a negative coin, but can gain another 4 skill power against burning fellas. 4 more if you line up the passive, having used this before. Dear lord, this skin casually gets to 50 with a 100% damage boost. They would proceed to feed this E.G.O with even more later. Moving along though, we've got a few more pairs, then a lot of oddballs. Starting with the pairs first, we've got the 2 Fluid Sacs. Don's was an unusual SP damage affair with a free Tremor Burst and Sinking. Heck, she dealt more SP damage after skill attack end if there was a Gloom A resin. I fear the day this gets a Fred Spin 5, but not as much as I fear the Boogeyman next. Force Fluid Sac is renowned as one of the single best E.G.Os in the game, and to some still holds that crown. It heals a ridiculous amount of SP, upwards of 130 SP, then heals everyone for 15% of their max HP. Using the Corrosion is throwing, but the Awakening is just that ungodly that it justifies its expensive 9 Sin Affinity cost. He quotes that this battle will conclude with victory whenever you use it. Due to the ridiculous pump insanity and HP, this is pretty much a guarantee if you can spam this turn after turn. It is why some people make it a point to never use this E.G.O or hold it as a badge of honor not to do so. I'd say cut the elitism. Just let people use it in clear content. No harm, no foul. Besides, this does get outclassed in healing, in the future at least. But yeah, this thing clears the game for you, and is a crutch a lot of fellas rely on. It's either this or one of the other sanity-stimming E.G.Os. If this ever gets a Fred Spin 5, the game will just roll over and die at that point. Roseate Desires are the other pair. They're both debuff packages that are often overlooked. Honger's one is mostly in softening up a target in defensive capabilities, whereas Ishmael is mostly softening offensive capabilities. Honger's boosts lust damage later, but Ishmael's deals out pink ribbons. This is unmatched and stupid good bind application for free with her passive here. Boring looking, but exceedingly effective at its job. It's like having a mini snag harpoon as a passive. I'll be brief on the next few as we've got a stupid amount of ground to cover still. Screw Loose Wallop is a ridiculous amount of extra damage in return for maximum HP. It is Merceau's alternative stim in the Teft slot. Pursuance is a huge heal, 30% on 2 Sinners is a stupid amount, extra protection there is huge as well. It is notably cheaper than Fluid Sac for around the same healing, but focused on 2 Sinners. The Corrosion swaps to huge offensive bonuses in free damage up for 2 allies. Heathcliff's Telepole exists, I guess. Big negative slap for charge counts. Needs Envy Resin to properly shine. The Corrosion can roll stupid high, upwards of 54. Just don't roll heads or you'll eat free fragile. Ishmael's Ardor Blossom Star is just fantastic. It's a tremorless Tremor Burst in Stagger Threshold Razor. A bit of extra burn and a fantastic positive clash of 41+ with positive offense level. The passive lets any Ishmael spread burn around for fun. This one remained staple for a long time, and eventually gets a FOMO alternative down the line. Rhymeshank used to be Sinking's goats. Pop this thing once or twice an encounter, and your Sinking counter remains perfectly stable, especially if you get that Corrosion off. If you manage to overclock it, just tap it once and you're golden. As an enabler, this thing is disgusting, but somehow we got an ID that managed to pretty much replace this thing completely outside of specific edge cases. And well, anytime you want to run someone who isn't just Kodya. Beyond that though, this E.G.O offers some stupid extras in bind and attack power down on the passive. If you somehow end up with this passive on Kodya to boot, things become stupid disgusting. That said, the Corrosion on this does have special targeting, so on anything with more HP than the Sinners, anything with at least 3 parts, this is basically free to corrode and reap the benefits of. This thing is still disgusting and is replaced not by an E.G.O, but by an ID, and even then the ID can still use the E.G.O. Impending Days Sinclair is a speedrunner's best friend. This is due to the super boost to E.G.O resource gain on kill. Otherwise, this isn't exactly the most notable. It can sometimes do its gimmick to heal on a kill, but needs a little more incentive to use, especially in boss fights. The Corrosion needs you to fail kills in comparison. Yasunyara Otis is a bit of a joke. It offers very minuscule benefits in attack up and some lust fragile, alongside some lust damage up every turn. It also heals Otis's SP by 3. The Corrosion though is 2 lust fragile and 2 fragile, making it a heck of a lot more usable and actually a rather mad 40% damage stim in the right setup. Just if only she had something more consistent to fill in lust-oriented compositions, besides the barber and students. Ebony Stem, on the other hand, is a lot more staple. This makes any Otis go more rupture positive, well, at least in the sense of returning counts the following turn. On dedicated rupture units like the Heisho, this becomes insanely broken, but otherwise is just okay. The extra bind is nice though, similar to Roseate Desire. The Gluttony Fragility is alright, more so of Heisho's as well. Legitimate Gregor is weird. On paper, it's quite busted. 4 Paralyze is a lot to use. With a guaranteed fast Gregor, this would be insane, but he's slow for the most part. Hohenheim Gregor is quite fast, but not exactly what we need thanks to the passive. The passive offers maggots, an unusual bleed count stimming engine. This would be very powerful if only it was easier to fuel for bleed-centric teams. Bleed having a home in Lust rather than Gluttony is what kills this thing, as maggots either come on the Corrosion or at a percentage chance based on Gluttony A resin, which is just unfortunate. Otherwise, this would have been an amazing bleed engine. Definitely keep this in mind if we ever get a fast, Gluttony-centric bleed Gregor. Lantern is kinda just sad. It's a self-heal based on damage dealt. It doesn't really do much damage. On multiple enemies, you may see some HP back, but at 24 with a -3 offense level, I wouldn't hold my breath, even with 60% lifesteal. That is 43 HP, assuming 1x resistances on 3 targets. IDs are starting to breach 200 to 300, so this not scaling upwards is rather pathetic. Other percentage heals will do better, and while playing 2 resistances may offer more of a heal, this is a selfish heal only for Gregor specifically, whereas Fluid Sac and Pursuance heal allies instead. Last and surprisingly not least, Wishing Khan Yi Sung. This has some usage these days, because heck, we have a fast Yi Sung who can totally abuse this for free Paralyze. The Sloth Fragile also helps if you are running the Uma on a Tremor team for some reason or another. If Maso's Kanto happens to be Sloth Blunt enemies as well, this thing is going to skyrocket in value, but in the heck is getting 3 of each Blunt and Sloth protection. All of that to say, some of the E.G.Os from launch have stayed entirely relevant, if only due to percentage healing and sanity manipulation. There are some funky status-based outliers too, and heavy utility, but few of these actually scream damage. Just enablers and disablers, which honestly, to have those on your sideboard feels shockingly card game-like. Moving along to the additional offerings in Season 1, we have 3 pairs of mildly relevant E.G.Os. Starting with the current least, additional telepoles. Based on the Alley Watchdog, we now have a total of 3 of these chucklefucks. Don's is a huge charge count stim to herself and the party alongside some extra charge battery. The Corrosion is weirdly nasty and bumping everyone's charge by absurd amounts, but also turning everyone into paper at the same time with 5 fragility and 12 count. At the time, this would have boosted W Corp Don like crazy, and while even now the Magical Girl would benefit from plenty of charge to burn. Frost, on the other hand, is a lot more stable. Smaller, less wild amounts, some charge efficiency, paralyze, envy power, and haste even. The Corrosion goes all in on the debuff package in comparison, being in the he slot. It does compete hard for force attention with a lot of other fantastic E.G.Os including Fluid Sac. Then comes both lifetime stews. Don's is supposed to cash out Lust resources for benefits, whereas Sinclair is supposed to hit your teammates to heal them, set them on fire, and grant them E.G.O Resource Amp, a stupid strong, stupid rare debuff. These both get a Fred Spin 5 later that makes them bloody insane, but at Fred Spin 4 they are rather terrible to borderline useless. Afterwards is the Dimension Shredder pair. Yi Sung becomes Rupture's boogeyman. This thing turns the guy exceedingly positive on his Rupture focus IDs and offers a decent bit of charge back in post. The Corrosion isn't too much to write home about, aside from being potentially high damage at the cost of charge and 5 Rupture counts. If this gets a Fred Spin 5, I'd imagine they'll offer it some synchronization bonuses with the relevant ID. Honger's is a little more straightforward. Rather, all it really offers is some haste and fragile. The passive does offer him a once per encounter death cheat though. For the post-launch, it was very charge-oriented. W Corp would be eating good among others, but the stews were some hot garbage for almost 3.5 years. They're now hard meta, but we'll get to there later. Now for Season 2. We've got almost exclusively pairs here, so they'll be quite fast to go over. Starting out is Capote. Ishmael's is an okay RAF stim. It's all RAF-centric, so mileage will vary. It uniquely has SP damage on it. There's a little tremor on the Corrosion, but not fantastic at 2 counts for 1 burst. It does spread count though. Maso's version, on the other hand, is absolutely filthy. This thing just mirrors your burner's tremor, no questions asked. Have 99 burn on targets? Well, so long as you have at least 4 tremor counts on the target too, you're about to have 99 tremor potency. It's just one innocuous line in the damn thing that turns this from huge burn stick to just pure filth. The rest of this thing is rather inconsequential, just showering burn count everywhere if it staggers. This thing is impossibly meta within a Tremor Scorch team. else any team that casually has access to both stable burn count and tremor bursts. Now comes the double dipping of AEDD, the funny shock centipede. Heathcliff's one is exceedingly good. It is Paralyze and Haste alongside Gloom Fragility. The passive makes Heathcliff far tankier as well, being granted a 2.5% HP heal at the cost of a charge, free if he's under 40%. The Corrosion turns it into a damaging E.G.O, but nothing too fantastic to write home about. It does set him 10 charge count at the cost of 10% HP, I suppose. As for Gregor, the fella is part Charge Battery and part Rupture Merchant. He gains charge count, applies Spark Discharge, then proceeds to convert his charge on heads hits into someone else's charge at half efficiency. Spark Discharge is kinda cool, but we've since moved on from Gloom Reliant Rupture. The extra count return on charge is also kinda just okay. I wish there was more synergy with the ID, but you can't have everything. Not meta by any stretch of the imagination, but still does its niche. Now the two Sun Showers are entirely different from one another. Sun Shower Otis is a multi-purpose poise stim with Tremor Burst, Bind, and Sinking count even. Heck, the passive gets her poise and protection post-stagger. The Corrosion offers Rupture on top of all of that, with Rupture count. All rather funky stuff combined. In comparison, Yisang's one is a different risk level entirely, being a WAV instead of TEF, and offers sloth-related attack bonuses and plenty of protection. Free this turn, free the following turn. Damn good stuff. The passive is a little nudge in SP to everyone, that being up to 21 per turn now, I suppose. The Corrosion, on the other hand, forgoes all the defensive bonuses for 2 turns of Sloth Power and damage alongside Sloth Fragility and Pierce Fragility. Essentially a 60% boost to Sloth Pierce attacks, which unfortunately aren't super common. They definitely exist within Tremor units, with Eurohongers and Famclair as easy examples. Anyhow, in terms of protective stuff, this is definitely on the stronger end of things. I've used it to great effect in the most recent Railway against that fuck-ass dragon. Next is Roshu's pair of Red Eyes and Red Eyes Open. The first is a unique debuff package, even offering plus coin drop alongside Bind and Slash Fragile. She also inflicts Bind on Clash Win, which is damn useful. The Corrosion is just extra of the above. Red Eyes Open, on the other hand, is an unusual damage nuke and heal. It doesn't do an amazing amount of damage, as a single high rolling coin and the damage conditionals aren't fantastic. It struggles to do what one needs it to do, but ideally you're supposed to use these two E.G.Os back to back to get the most out of the latter. Unfortunately, that doesn't really make this good. The passive is also difficult to activate outside of Lobotomy Corp agents with said E.G.O gear to boot. Soda is a no. Honger's one is trash and should never be in consideration. It's the flat properties and how low everything about it is. Roshu's Zayan is not something to replace for this, as you are unlikely to kill with a Zayan, at least with the Awakening. Now that Corrosion though is surprisingly good. E.G.O Resol's amp is rare, and getting haste ain't bad by any stretch. Situationally useful compared to the always useful nature of Forest for the Flames. Now this Lantern is a lot better off compared to Gregor's. Sinclair's just heals teammates for a percentage of HP on hits. After that, he can get some extra percentage heals for himself. As far as Sinclair and E.G.Os go, not bad by any stretch of the imagination. The Corrosion is AoE Rupture count and defense level down. It does roll a 30 for 5 targets, so healing 50% of damage dealt is not too bad in comparison, assuming 1x resistances. That's up to 75 HP given back, an actual solid chunk compared to Greg. Yasunyara Heathcliff is damn strong. Expensive, but offers 100 SP across the team, and 2 attack power down on enemies. This is like combining Rep Emitter with a Crow's Eye, I guess. The passive here offers increased maximum HP, increasing his survivability by quite a bit. As written, he can do this 3 times per encounter, so I suppose this scales on stagger bars, which is real funky, since we're getting less and less of those now, meaning he kinda just loses out. The Corrosion is a whole ass other package. Free defense level to an ally in return for defense level up and damage up, alongside a tiny blip of SP and some fragile application. I don't really see enough of a reason to corrode or overclock this, but if for some reason you need fragile on 5 targets, it's here. Last to talk about is one of Project Moon's biggest mistakes. Regret Merceau. The Tremor portion is good, but not what we're here for. We aren't here for the Corrosion either. Instead, we're here for that sweet coin power passive. At the cost of 1 base power, we instead get 2 coin power on the leftmost skill on his dashboard. he becomes a coin power monster. Future Musos would have some coin power ripped out in order to compensate for the monstrous amounts that this is offering here. For 5 ego resources, he just gets to have 2+ coin power at all times. It is decidedly absolute filth. This is what makes him casually roll high 20s and beyond on skill 2s, far higher on skill 3s. This thing will remain meta so long as coins are being flipped, which is always. Heck, it's been meta so long as dice have been rolled. That said, it is only coin power and not extra damage bonuses. Not that Muso is lacking for those either. And so we come to Season 3. You know, I thought I'd have to be less in depth about individual egos, but there's like half of them per season compared to IDs. Season 3 has the usual pairs from the Battle Pass alongside a few additional offerings. Let's start with the pass's worst, 9.2. Based off of the skin profit, these are supposed to take burn and convert into defense down in the case of Faust, or escalate lust in the case of Sinclair, a sinner that doesn't exactly have all that much within a lust-oriented team composition. Both of these are considered difficult to use, with Faust being particularly abysmal. The passives are somewhat okay, but there are not many worlds where you would want to actively rush towards popping either of these. Heck, there are even less worlds where either sinner can fuel these egos by themselves. Lust burn is just not a thing. If these were Wrath-centric though, it would have been a different story. Next is Effervescent Corrosion. I actually like one of these. Honger's one gains attack weight based on his own HP, it's more rupture focused, having Gluttony Fragile down, and some rupture application. Some bind is also included. The corrosion offers some lifesteal and counts instead of potency for rupture, but it is negligible amounts in being gluttony resonance divided by 3. The passive is a cactus one, but needing to be hit under 50% HP is quite risky in Limbus, if only due to the bursty nature of encounters. Now Rodya's version is crazy good and slept on. 7 tremor counts split across up to 4 targets based on main target HP. Bind and a tremor burst, the burst is bloody free too. The passive is kinda just okay. Being locked to pierce makes it worse than red eyes or pink ribbons for consistent bind application. The Nurse Father can actually fuel this on her own too, which is quite funky. The corrosion isn't the most worth using. 5 defense level down and a freebie burst aren't the worst, but not for 30 sanity and 9 ego resources. The 30% heal is also kinda unless you manage to hit 4 different targets. If you're seeking healing from this thing, you're a bit shit out of luck, or the fight is already going terribly. Then comes Blind Obsession. Roshu's one is poise and charge focused. It offers a quick poise stim and a tiny bit of charge. The main appeal is that passive that offers up to a free poise count refund so long as you crit with a pride skill. Now the corrosion is quite solid, converting charge into poise and actually having some damage conditionals. If we ever get a charge and poise focused Roshu, for one, not only will it be stupid broken, but 2, this ego will come back to haunt us. In comparison to the niche usage of Roshu's Blind Obsession comes Ishmael's one. For 11 ego resources, this WAV offers a rather large amount of benefits the moment you pop it. The Awakening is 25 SP to 4 allies. Charge, poise, pierce power up, and damage power up. Yeah, this is a cavalcade of buffs on offer for popping this button. On a pierce team, this is quite a lot of benefits. Even on any other, 2 damage up shared around is a fantastic benefit. The passive though, can be a little rough these days. 5 sinking in return for a haste and free offense level would be fantastic if we could avoid getting hit at all, but this is another victim of unbreakable coins. You will feel the demerit from time to time. Now that corrosion is one of the nastier ones. Plenty of healing followed by a poise gain before offering 2 huge benefits. Free sticky pride fragility, as this lasts this turn and the next, alongside 2 damage up for 4 allies this turn and the next. On the right kind of team, say a certain blade lineage sort, this may as well be a blanket 50% damage increase. This capstone Vav is bloody insane. Beyond there we have the holiday pair. Heathcliff's I bring up from time to time since it can help us with status infliction. It does require Heathcliff to be suffering a status effect, but most bosses hand those out while buffing themselves, giving this almost 100% uptime in modern boss fights. The Awakening is an RNG cannon, while the Corrosion has some funky SP hates. Meanwhile, Otis has an SP heal on hers. The passive is rather odd in throwing random debuffs out if she manages to buff allies. It's no replacement fluid sac, but as a second SP manipulation engine, isn't terrible. That is, if it was on anyone else. The he slot for Otis is rather competitive. Rodya's Pursuance, much like Merceau's, is a chunky heal. It doesn't offer protection like his, but instead a sloth fragility and potential shield. 30% to 2 allies and a 15% shield to each if she staggers or kills with this isn't bad, because it doesn't do much damage to get that second conditional off. Meanwhile, the passive offers some small healing for unfocused encounters, whereas the corrosion is some SP hates and isn't much to write home about. It can negate 100 SP from a team though, which is very funny. We can cause a monstrous amount of corrosions in a row. Now, since Rodya paired up with Merceau, I suppose Don should go ahead and pair up with someone else, right? Well, pairing up with Yi-Sung now with Wishing Khan. Bleed counts, tremor, and paralyze. The count is actually pretty nasty, all things considered. Where it gets strange is the passive. It's poise. If you kill someone with bleed, you get a minuscule 2 poise potency and count. Rather odd, but if we ever get more tremor hemorrhage IDs on a Don nonetheless, we'll be cooking a fair bit more, I reckon. On the other hand, that corrosion would go a lot harder if she had reliable poise gain. The potential free burst is whack on demand, especially in only reducing count by 2. With enough support, this could go quite hard, but as far as I know, PM are cowards. The ID that could have gotten a triple status was only counted as 2 of those, meaning we're unlikely to see this kind of setup in the future. Last of concern is Garden of Thorns Gregor. For 2 of every E.G.O resource, you can pop an E.G.O that needs a full 6A resin to pull off its effects. Thus far, most of the particularly good E.G.Os don't need the resin scaling to be good, else need a minimal amount to get a few extra benefits. This one is asking for an entire team's worth to do so, at least an entire team until you get to Canto 8, where we finally get a 7th Sinner on field. Even then, this thing is locked to Lust, meaning Gregor either needs to be the fastest or slowest on the team, and with Greg being particularly slow but not always the single slowest, he will often scramble other resins that aren't Lust. That is, until we got Lamp Gregor. By sheer miracle, we got a Gregor that can absolutely disregard speed by going too slow to care, meaning Garden of Thorns in a 7-man team can use any other resonance as well, not being limited to just Lust. Suddenly, this makes Garden of Thorns Gregor on Lamp Gregor one of the middle's best friends. Well, this is exceedingly stupid, but it does suddenly turbo up the NV game plan a lot, so long as he can generate all the other resources, which as of recent is very possible. All that to say, we get power ups, damage ups, repetition of the above effects the following turn, and a 22% heal for the entire party for popping this thing with a full 6A resin. That is actually quite a lot. Does it justify the cost? Well, not quite, but the execution is now quite a lot easier than it used to be. The passive is hot garbage though. It offers that tier 1 E.G.O gift Crown of Roses. A 2 rupture, maybe 4 rupture team-wide. Hot garbo. Finally, that corrosion is more debuff focused, flipping the effects onto the enemy but as negatives. All that to say, this E.G.O was kinda terrible when it released, but has now found a new home among the middle. Now we arrive at Season 4. Happy sinking season. We're about to get some very staple E.G.Os, ones that basically never leave or cannot be truly replaced in their niche. Starting out, we've got Bygone Days, with 3 entries in this season. Gregor's is probably the least impactful here, and that is even with a rather chunky SP heal. He unfortunately drains 4 sinking count total to buff his 45 SP heal by 20 more. If you're already ahead on sinking but need SP for some reason, this becomes surprisingly good. But as sinking's best application currently lies with a negative SP ID, this makes things a smidge more complicated than you'd want in a status that already needs to juggle a fair bit. The passive though is rather solid. Additional E.G.O resources on kill, more with sinking is very nice in extended story dungeons and the railway. That is so long as you give this to a Gregor that can consistently kill. Now that corrosion is a beast. If we run this on a particularly fast Gregor, you can get 4 gloom fragility for everyone else's attacks alongside a casual +2 to sinking and free curse to round it all up. A 40% gloom damage amp is nothing to scoff at. Then comes Bygone Days Yi-Sung. This one is a Zayn, unfortunately needing to replace his fantastic Crow's Eye view. It's got rather unique usage in sinking, being a stimulant while a target is under the effects of Echoes of the Manor. By some weird-ass spaghetti code, the sinking that this E.G.O applies is in multiple instances of 1 at a time, causing Echoes of the Manor to freak out and offer a ridiculous amount of extra count, so long as we get particularly high gloom resonances off during its usage. As Gloom is staple within sinking, this is no problem at all. The passive lets Yi-Sung clash significantly better on some of his IDs and turns Solemn Lament, who already wishes to clash, into an even more reliable clasher. The Corrosion is It boosts the attack weight conditional before inflicting extra bind up to 4 bind. Useful, but nowhere near as good as the aforementioned combo. Last to come out far later in the season to complete the trio is Bygone Days Ishmael. Aside from having some of the best drip, this one offers HP healing instead, up to 30% on 2 allies for the Awakening. While it's no Pursuance, it also offers a bunch of debuffs too. Sinking Count, Curse, Gloom Fragility, and the Uninvited, a unique debuff that can spread like cancer, offering additional damage to sinking inflicted targets, as well as some light SP healing on kill. Ishmael's passive here plays directly into it, offering a 5 SP top-up against targets with the Uninvited, as well as gaining a clash power against them. This clash power also extends to enemies with panic type changing effects. Now, that Corrosion offers much of the same from the Awakening, but most importantly with wider reach on allies, and echoes of the Mana Infliction. Even without bringing either of the butlers, you can still access Echoes of the Mana this way, allowing you to tap the target with Yi-Sung during its duration later. The next set lies in Electric Screaming. Don's is an AoE charge flush for damage. Realistically, that's all it offers. Both the Awakening and the Corrosion are just that. Slam for purple damage. Muso, on the other hand, was given one of the single strongest charge engines in existence. So long as you can get off that Envy Resonance, everyone is not only getting harder hitting Envy skills, but also getting stupid amounts of outgoing charge. Beyond there, he just gets a Resonance-based passive for extra offense and defense level, benefiting a very specific, very purple, Vengeance-based bunch. While Envy charge gets the most out of this, Envy in general just goes hard here. The Corrosion offers more damage, a Paralyze, and Rupture. And now we're looking at a rather devastating Valve pairing, Binds. Otis's one is a tremor-focused affair that offers tremor amplitude conversion into tremor fracture, one that makes staggers far more potent. In addition, the stagger threshold Razor from Tremor Bursts here increases by 100%, at least for this E.G.O. The passive offers Pride Resonance and extra E.G.O resources on stagger and kill, still damn good effects. Meanwhile, the Corrosion is a triple burst, while being all in on Tremor. Now, this wouldn't hold a candle to the effects of Heathcliff's Binds. Besides the mixed sinking Tremor status application, we get some very unique effects in post. Heathcliff gains 20 bind, and 2 attack power, alongside Before the King and Binds. This is turning any single target attack into an AoE instead. This splashes quite a large amount of damage, specifically onto targets with the least HP, functionally tripling Heathcliff's output for a turn, so long as there are other targets. Beyond that, the passive is ridiculous. It amplifies resonance bonuses by quite a large amount, up to a +5 offense and defense level in an A resin, including Heathcliff. It is stupid good in any team that can make use of resonances at all. The Corrosion is also stupid strong in spreading out bonuses to other allies too. Free attack power and gloom damage up is damn solid. In addition, binding fellows by 20 speed has some funny ramifications if you wish to abuse specific timings or passive selections. This thing will remain staple as long as Heathcliff can fit in a resonance color. Next, we're staring at Wingbeat. This is the gambler's choice. You get a stupid amount of Gluttony Fragile, Healing, and Bleed Infliction, if you can keep rolling heads. The passive is nice in granting damage and healing, quite a lot of it to boots per turn. Meanwhile, the Corrosion rarely ever sees use. Actually, I won't lie, this is my first time reading the Corrosion. It's almost entirely different to the reuse spam that is the Awakening. It's more on the predation end of the abnormality, in stealing HP from allies to heal up. It then grants attack power up and haste. Aside from that, overhealing does offer offense level. There's heals and damage beyond there, but damn, the Corrosion's actually kind of cool. I might slot this in more often. Oh, notably though, every single E.G.O up until this point has been a single coin. This kind of breaks that in having coin reuses, but I suppose for the time being, it will be the exception rather than the norm. Not for long though. Then comes Sanguine Desire. We care about next to none of the lines here, just the one that says no bleed count on main target is lost for this turn. That part is completely and utterly filthy. The rest, this remains meta all the way until the most recent iteration of the bleed team. All because it can stabilize any bleed stack the turn it goes out. The passive sounds good on paper, but with one specific issue. Most of Roger's actual direct bleed application is quite low. Doubling it isn't as big a return as you may initially imagine, especially in doubling only once per turn. The corrosion is just an AoE of free bleed counts, not much to write home about. This thing is still quite hard meta, but not as necessary as it was in the past. The Cavernous Wailing duo has one utterly broken choice and one niche one. Hongers becomes Tremor's boogeyman for a while, such a strong boogeyman that sloth damage would be neutered into the ground through enemy resistances for quite a while. It has amplitude conversion into reverb, meaning tremor bursts suddenly do mad amounts of damage. The rest of the effects are usually glossed over, but it does offer some debuffs through the passive in offense and defense level. The corrosion just offers more tremor potency, count and bursts. Meanwhile, Sinclair's is an odd shield management affair. It's barrier, protection, and blubber bubble. The last being an effect that allows barrier to persist and pops for sinking. The passive offers Sinclair some protection, while the corrosion plays more into sinking with a smidge of aggro and more blubber bubble effects. I know there's a decent few fans out there of this E.G.O, but I can't see myself using it all too often. Pushing survivability in Limbus usually doesn't pay off as much as turboing damage. And now comes the reason we can't have nice things. Say hello to Everlasting Forced. Wedding Forced, Tremor's true boogeyman, the one reason you use Moused in a Tremor team, you get the idea. This thing is just that strong. 10 Tremor count and potency, 4 bursts, 4 bursts that can multiply up to 12. Yeah, Tremor Everlasting Entanglement multiplies Tremor bursts. You can imagine just how degenerate this is. If you entangle any damaging types of Tremor before letting rip with this thing, 12 bursts may suddenly show up, followed by however many other bursts your team can output alongside their chances to multiply bursts. Assuming we got 6 other Sinners dropping 3 bursts each, that's up to 9 more per Sinner, for another potential 54 bursts. You can see why this would be considered problematic at least. The passive is haste for Tremor bursts, the overclock we virtually never want to touch due to the cost, but it's quite strong in offering everlasting in an AoE with slightly less bursts. As Tremor tends to not do well on groups, this will see limited use. Then comes Contempt or Roshu. This is staple E.G.O resource generation. With Roshu's increasing access to assist attacks and extra attacks, this only goes up in value as she can produce 2 extra E.G.O resources per turn after using this thing. The E.G.O itself is a low turn count reset nightmare, more specifically on that corrosion. It used to be one of the main strategies for speedrunning the railway. After all, it acted as a resource stim, damage, and bleed to hell and back. This thing is still meta even with competition in the slot nowadays. We can footstool over Heathcliff's fell bullets. The inevitable future pair will prove far more ungodly than an attack that sometimes returns 1 bullet. It offers a poise bump at times, but as this will almost never be a priority to activate, that passive alone is not enough to justify this thing's usage. Dimension Shredder Otis can be quite strong, but rarely a priority. We want a stronger charge ID to abuse if possible, compared to just the W Corp Captain. The E.G.O doesn't provide it too much more unique compared to the ID on her own. Perhaps faster consumption of charge and a higher maximum, but neither is much to write home about. From there we get Solemn Lament Gregor. This fella's awakening is up to 8 coins. This lets us cash out an extraordinary amount of sinking or rupture all in one go, while applying butterfly stacks at the same time. The passive allows for some little extra bumps in offensive capabilities, that of which will come in handy with all the negative effects sticking on our IDs these days. The corrosion cuts us down to a single coin compared to 8, offering balanced amounts of butterfly on multiple targets. It's got some SP scaled damage as well, but otherwise is mostly geared towards sinking support. The E.G.O is stupid good and, like its Ruiner counterpart, is a fantastic finisher. Alright, finally we're hitting Season 5. Okay, I'm sorry for lying that this video would be shorter than an hour. Somehow it really did just become quickfire reviews of everything before analysis. Anyway, we again have some pairs to care about. Starting out, we've got Lasso. Forced Lasso is based around rupture and haste application for the most part. The faster the Forced using this, the better. While this would be fantastic on Malforced, using Malforced skills themselves are often just better, which is one mad disappointment. The passive is unlikely to activate in a meaningful way outside of long, unfocused encounters. As for the corrosion, we get to inflict Lasso, a funny rupture potency stim and bind that works on speed. Meanwhile, Hongers can apply this on his awakening alongside a rather unique HP healing down. At a time, this used to be the single strongest supplier of Rupture when Talisman Man existed. Now it's kinda just okay. The passive is not bad at all, allowing you to spread lasso around for free on kill. Now that corrosion is mostly to just cash out damage instead on a rupture bleed plan. Not all too much damage, unfortunately. Now comes the Hex Nails. Rodya's benefits an envy resin team so much, especially a middle one in healing. It's just squeezing a Rodya in is particularly difficult. Meanwhile, Sinclair doubles down on the debuff package side of Hex Nail, offering plenty of nails, curse, clash power down, and even bind. These are very utility heavy egos, and at time of release, the teams that wanted them didn't exactly exist yet. Those would come soon enough though. Inevitably Sinclair's one would see more use with the middle in future, since it plays together far too nicely. Then comes Yearning Makala. Musou's one works off of inflicting more bleed and giving bleed an alternative payout in the form of rose wedges. It would become particularly strong when utilized with a certain prince that we would eventually get. Otherwise, Don's one scales off of Consumed Blood Feast, turning it all into damage in quite a large AoE. While the passive could hand out extra SP, and Corrosion could do some funky Blood Feast manipulation in activating bleed on self before eventually healing, a majority of the time we were just here for the awakening. It's a solid damage cash out that, if used at the right time during her Kanto's finale, trivialized the specific phase. Now then, Fell Bullet Yisung would inspire an insane amount of friendly fire brain rot, as well as become part and parcel of the Mirror Dungeon's fastest clears. Shockingly, when your non-renewable ammo resource turns into a renewable one, the team killing for damage becomes a lot more reasonable. Anyhow, on a poise-based Yisung or the Fell Bullet himself, this E.G.O deals an absurd amount of damage if you can kill a teammate. By not leveling every single ID you get, you make killing a friendly far easier. This thing makes you analyze Sinner resistances to check for Pierce weakness and a Pride fatality. Base Sinclair and two others are just that, meaning to shoot a twink is surprisingly meta. The Corrosion lets you do this harder, and the passives encourage you to keep looping it. Asymmetrical Inertia Heathcliff is something of a potential E.G.O, at least was for a while. Self-tremor conversion into clock winding is surprisingly good in offering speed and additional tremor potency, alongside counter application. The bursts and sloth fragility are nice to haves, but the all but permanent Broken Bell fragile debuff is pretty much always a 10% damage amp. It's why I always consider this E.G.O, though with more recent additions, a 10% rarely cuts it these days. The Corrosion makes it easier to pump up the clock winding and sloth fragility, but otherwise offers largely the same as the Awakening, just beefed up. The two Christmas Nightmares land in an odd place, being Sinking and Tremor. They're a little too expensive to use often, and have a mixed bag of effects surrounding Panic, Sinking, and Tremor. Personally, I use Ishmael's one more often as it grants tremor count for allies that need it in their engines. Gregor's one is a little too scatterbrained, and you're often better off just slotting Solemn Lament there instead. It does have a heal, though at 8 E.G.O resources, healing self only isn't exactly the finest effect. Then comes Magic Bullet Otis. Go watch any burn related ID review that I've put out, or just the Magic Bullet Otis video at all. This acts as an accelerant towards Dark Flame's game plan, allowing you to burn down pretty much any encounter and even skip certain HP gates. This thing is hard meta whenever burn is involved. It also casually has 7 different forms, all with unique effects and patterns, including execution damage and self-termination. The two Foracalgias are next. Roshu's acts like a nerfed down version of the Nebulizer, whereas Force acts to combat poise decay and provide long-term healing. Both are fantastic for stabilizing poise, but Roshu wishes to get kills with hers for additional benefits, compared to Force that is about healing up allies, plus having significantly different use cases. These aren't exactly must-includes nowadays, but they do offer band-aid solutions for the more poise-hungry out there. Now comes Indicant's Trial. It's a heal for up to 4 allies, however, that isn't the main appeal. That lies in Searing Birdcage. This is a debuff that increases Wrath resistance up to 2, 0.1 per stack of. The Awakening lets you slam 4 of this down, whereas the Corrosion caps at 5. Said Corrosion also offers far more burn. Beyond this potentially massive damage amplification and heal, this thing applies an alright amount of burn, and the passive throws in a bit of SP healing. Not bad to finish off a season. It may have been brief on Season 5, but there isn't that much tech with a lot of these, and they do most of what they say on the tin. Little in the way of turbo jank. In comparison, Season 6, which has a total of 6 E.G.Os. Could have sworn there was more of them. Project Moon really dropped the ball, I suppose. Heck, there's less stuff in the pass. Oh, the depths of PM's greed, cutting out freebies by a third. Red Sheet Dawn is up first. This is a surprisingly hard-hitting affair with Twisted Curse Talisman in tow. This helps you maintain Rupture in some funky ways, so long as you got the Gluttony Resonance to do so. The passive is kinda eh. It acts as damage amplification, I suppose, and defense level down. The Corrosion is just a slightly better version of the Awakening. It does get double the damage increase and easier to achieve conditionals. 100-footed Death Maggot, on the other hand, is rather confused in what it wants to do. It rolls stupid low for an E.G.O, but applies a unique poison that deals gluttony damage. This Centipede Venom can then transfer around. Otherwise, it inflicts Rupture and Sinking. Yeah, not fantastic. The damage can add up a smidge, but you'd only want the passive, I guess. This is some extra offense level from Sinking, meaning more damage and potential clash power, but free offense level doesn't offer that much damage at all, and Snag Harpoon already grants plenty of extra clash power. The Corrosion just mimics the original, but as negative coins instead. This thing is too scatterbrained to properly care about, and Snag Harpoon is just far more useful. Meanwhile, Tears of Tarnished Blood. This E.G.O works around Flower Burying Pin to offer extra offense level per 5 stacks, up to 4 essentially, at least for Sinclair's version. If you die with these, you deal gluttony damage equal to the stack before dropping off 5 Rupture. Anyhow, this thing is mostly a damage nuke that favors popping it at least twice to cash in the Flower Burying Pins, and Sinclair's death for huge amounts of damage. Most of the conditionals here regard the fella's HP, even offering a coin reuse that, on hit, kills him for more damage. If he or a buddy dies, he inflicts Fragile on all enemies. Aside from that, on turn end, he can heal SP if hits, has a debuff, or lost SP. All in all, pretty damn cool. If we don't need Sinclair to live. The Corrosion offers roughly the same, but as negative coins and without the VAV SP drain. Oh, right. As long as he has this slotted at combat start, he won't die before turn end. Meanwhile, Honger's one is just filthy. It's a multi-stage E.G.O where the first awakening just gets him shanked to start gaining flower burying wedges instead of pins. These only stack up to 3 and offer him far more bonuses than Sinclair. 2 offense level up and 2 defense level down per stack, and tarnished blood stacks. 6 more offense level is quite a lot for running your life short via tarnished blood, that of which eats 20% of HP per stack. Anyhow, once he hits 1 HP while having these wedges, Hongers triggers Tears of Tarnished Blood, the end. This is a decent nuke that scales off of Rupture, Tarnished Blood, and Flower Burying Wedge, offering coin power, attack weight, base power, and damage. The coins are quite vanilla in offering Rupture count and potency, otherwise with the small caveat of dying at the end of usage. Now there's one specific thing that can prevent this death compared to Sinclair's one, that being Lord Honger's own passive. As long as we've got 5 gluttony resources sitting around, he just lives and heals up 60% of his HP. After going through all that, he just gets to have a free damage up every turn too. And yet, we still haven't mentioned passives or corrosion. If he kills something, he gets haste. Everyone gets damage ups based on affinity that scored the kill, and he inflicts attack power down to all enemies. Aside from that, if he dies, everyone gets gluttony and pierce damage up, and again, inflicts that attack power down. The corrosion, on the other hand, is kinda sad. Just unbreakables and negative coin AoE for rupture count and potency. In the Name of Love and Hate, Don Quixote is expensive as all hell to actually use at 12 E.G.O resources, but offers a bunch of benefits beyond just converting charge into damage. Allies get attack and final power, alongside damage up. Heals allies based on charge consumption and envy resin, even gains Don Magical Arcana and inflicts the main target with Mark of Villainy. This is a lot of bonuses as is. Meanwhile, the passive is a bit funky. It gives charge IDs that don't have charge potency generation the ability to do so, before offering 5% more damage to Don's damage per charge potency. Beyond that, it gives Madonka an extra skill-free use, which is ridiculously good. Last but definitely not least for this season is Crushbound Past Merceau. It reads as stupid long, but basically as when the target has a lot of tremor, gain a stupid amount of extra effects. Aside from that, it heals Merceau, heals his SP2 if you count your resins right, and it inflicts tremor before the attack. Then proceeds to slap for counts, trigger entanglement, more potency, up to 50% damage based on potency, then 100% damage based on potency and count, with up to 3 bursts based on damage increased. 3 bursts for 2 counts on up to 9 targets. This can theoretically slam down 27 bursts in one go. So imagine that with Everlasting in tow, and you understand why Cavernous Wailing's reverb may have gotten quietly nerfed by sloth resistance adjustments. As for the passive, its alternating damage damage and protection alongside getting accumulated past for clash power and offense level. If this E.G.O doesn't end the fight as is, it sure as heck should have crippled everything within. In comparison, the corrosion scales off of resonance first, then tremor on target. Boosts up its raw damage even more in doing so, before letting rip for up to 4 tremor bursts. This is, as written, ungodly amounts of damage to cash out, and comes at an eye-watering 17 E.G.O resources to do. That or just slam a Superbia and call it a day. Now, there wasn't suspiciously powerful and meta-shifting E.G.Os released between here and Season 7, so we'll forget those ever happened for now, and move right into our current season. 10 of them this time around. I'll be brief, though, since we've had plenty of time to play with these in recent. I'll Go for Scissors is an Envy-centric set of E.G.Os that works around having a lot of Envy resources to convert into more useful things. Otis converts Envy resources by Envy Resonance into other E.G.O resources for each least owned affinity up to a maximum of 6, allowing a resource-locked team like the middle to gain access to other useful resources to fuel passives and E.G.Os. Meanwhile, it also heals allies rather selectively, only healing up Envy skill holders. Aside from that is Needles, Curse, and Nails, all useful for the middle. The passive offers power down like the gift when the opponent is at 33% or lower HP. The Corrosion leans more into the debuffs and has benefits on Clash Lose and Clash Win, either gaining attack weight or stuffing in more statuses respectively. As for our most recent addition to the E.G.O lineup, Don's version is a healing bump for 4 allies and a funny damage spike for losing the Clash. Clash Win offers a power down instead and some bleed on hits. As for that passive of hers, 10% extra Envy damage up to 7% more for Envy Resonance, and then offense level up to 3. She then applies a consistent needle to all enemies on an A resin. As for that Corrosion, we're looking at winning the Clash for damage boosts and losing it for a power down. Short of saying that this is all middle upscale in the description, both of these E.G.Os severely benefit the middle. Move-in Reg is burn and charge support for Heathcliff. Oh, it offers another middle upscale. I am just going to move along. The charge may not care for the middle, but the rest is favoritism for Ricardo Cliff. Great Trichilocosm offers 2 entirely different E.G.Os. Yisung's one is burn, sinking, and poise focused, benefiting a certain Nurse Father's capabilities. The passive is supposed to stack up more damage on kills and more status on Shattered World victims, but otherwise this E.G.O is a status applying mass attack. The Corrosion is much the same, but in negative form, with an extra damage conditional. In sheer comparison, Roshu's version is quite busted and competitive in fighting for the spots with Contempt All. It replaces the sinking with bleed under its conditionals instead. As a free coin AoE, the damn thing hits ridiculously hard even for the Awakening, at least so long as you manage to get Entangled Life, that of which is stupid easy with our seasonal capstone ID. 1 evade and we suddenly have 300 plus. 2 evades and we could potentially have maxed it out. This means that final coin here can casually slam for 248% damage, upwards of 446% damage increase on a single target. This can cash in for massive amounts of damage. The passive is kinda the on-kill or stagger damage increase is nice, but not game-changing. The Corrosion is supposed to cash in even more damage and, well, yeah, with damage multipliers getting close to over 600% on that final coin, that is inevitably the case. It also casually heals her. Then comes Harmony. This thing is stupid. Rhythm, enmity damage, SP heals, bleed, burn, and 4 whole-ass coin reuses. It's also surprisingly cheap sanity-wise, even if it loses you sanity for the next 2 turns, simply because the passive gives you Rhythm, but also heals HP and SP on kill, double if the resin was this E.G.O, then at turn end, the bastard heals SP based on status. Essentially, this is free SP, but costs a decent bit of E.G.O resources otherwise. The Corrosion is similar to the Awakening, but awarding far more buffs in the form of Wrath, Lust, and Envy damage alongside giving allies a fragile. Said set of buffs can trigger twice. Aside from that, the reuse isn't based on heads rolls, just HP lost instead. Not a turbo high priority, but definitely a fun one to use. It does basically patchwork Phil Clare's issues though. Okay, just 4 more to go until we're caught up, right? We can see the finish line. Ardor Blossom Star Force works to ensure the E.G.O gear force of the same name doesn't explode. However, this E.G.O otherwise applies a lot of burn and enables some extra burn activations through Embers. This is designed with a specific combo in mind, that being to awaken the E.G.O, explode with the skill free and cheat death, before dropping the Corrosion with the extra damage buffs, afterwards for massive Embers generation. This also has an SP heal, to self, as well as stupid amounts of burn application to self and enemies. Into the Sunset Rodya is stupid good. This is one of the single cheapest heals while offering SP manipulation and quite a bit of damage. Rather, a damage echo followed by damage ups. For all intents and purposes, this is a rather cost-effective and strong means of patching chip damage and accelerating game plans. The corrosion is also nothing to scoff at, offering a 50% damage boost on a 2 negative coin Zayan that has attack weight. Not only that it's unbreakable and has bleed and burn count alongside potency with Wrath and Lust Fragility, it's all just really overloaded. You remember how garbage 100-footed Death Maggot seemed? This is the complete and total opposite of that in usefulness. Now for Shadow Vested Bladesinger and the second Solemn Laments, go watch the videos I put out about them. These fundamentally change kits entirely and are impossible to really place on any real metric, but I would like to say that Shadow Vested Bladesinger is the single most disgusting E.G.O I have ever seen. Not for its awakening or corrosion, but just for the sheer amount of team buffs. How you managed to turn IDs from years ago into ones that can easily clear modern content is quite horrific as is, but holy hell, to this extent is just flat out ridiculous. If you want to point to power creep, point at this one specifically. As for Solemn Laments, well, it just juices up one guy to stupid levels rather than a whole ass team. So no, the butterfly minigun doesn't suddenly act as a replacement, or turbo power creep Gregor's version even. They both have their own uses. Okay, so that should be everything, right? Except for the bloody exceptions. Let's rewind to Season 6 for a moment. There were 4 more E.G.Os there that we didn't talk about that we should probably cover. I can sum them up quite well nowadays. If you missed Title Elegy, you missed one of Ishmael's best E.G.Os that will likely be irreplaceable. It is that good and fights far too hard for its slot. If you missed Command Meltdown, you missed a solid healing and shielding alternative to Fluid Sac. If you missed To Remain Oneself, you missed out on one of Honger's single best spammable AoE E.G.Os. If you missed Unbrilliant Glory, your account is bricked. Okay, I'm kidding with the last one, but that's just how potent this particular one is. It's like Tears of the Tarnished Blood, but in Burn and Tremor, and doesn't kill you for using it. With those out of the way, we've got Fred Swin 5s. 4th Match Flame Noshu did not need anywhere near this much of an upscale, but here we are. We got a 20% echo and timing/coverage coverage adjustments on her damage conditional. Beyond there is just so much in that passive. The first line is all she had before. Now she's 3 entire conditionals to throw in for that 4th bloody skill. A 20% damage increase on Wrath skills, an SP heal on E.G.O skill plus coins, and the opposite for negative coins. Just Christ, did we need all that? The corrosion is now unbreakable, but has less negative coin power and loses base power on clash loss. Aside from that, a 30% Wrath damage echo. For an E.G.O that I'd still consider performing quite well, the damn thing is just now best in slot for any Roshu who can get it fueled. Yi-Sang's one got extra power and extra power condition, a jump from 20 to 30. Beyond there, damage conditionals and a far better passive. We're no longer in need of a Wrath A resin, but instead just apply burn on Clash Win based on Wrath resin times 2. This is bloody stupid. The corrosion hops to 32 and gains damage conditionals alongside a unique buff next turn called Blazing. This is 2 final power on the first base skill he uses on turn and hits the fella for 2% of his max HP on hits. This upscale is nice, but ultimately not the most significant. Now Rodya's one is just, let's have more damage! Resonance-based damage, Wrath power, and Wrath damage on Awakening alongside a smaller negative coin. The passive gained some Wrath fragility as well, which is kinda just okay. Meanwhile, the corrosion became unbreakable, gained a damage conditional on resin, more Wrath power up, and Wrath damage, but otherwise remains largely the same, getting to 38 power and losing 18 on Clash Loose. I'd say Roshu got the best of it, with Rodya second and Yi-Sang falling behind, but reasonably, the main things to change were the numbers tweaking and getting access to more damage conditionals. Not even aggressively statted damage conditionals in this case. In comparison though, the lifetime stews. Starting with the less filthy of the two, Dawn. She gets Lust power up to allies, final power from dual status, and better damage alongside some bleed count. The passive becomes 1-to-1 conversion rather than 2-to-1 for lust resources, and a 20 or more offers her Lust power up instead while cancelling out the passive. Lust base skills also just get to have a bump in damage scaling off of Lust resources. All this essentially means you can use her with the Blood Fiend, no questions asked. In stark contrast though, they turned Sinclair into a monster. You want the definition of power creep? Here we fucking go. We went from healing or burning for E.G.O resource amp and haste to being a gluttony resource cheaper, becoming unbreakable, healing SP, healing max HP or for self, granting himself E.G.O resource amp and 2 haste, all at attack end. The coin itself always heals allies and always gives them E.G.O resource amp and 2 haste. Only on Tails does it then set you on fire. It goes from conditional major buff to straight up just a major buff. All that without even mentioning his passive. Previously, it was a single burn for a Tails hit. Now, an entire paragraph. When using base skills with burn against enemies, he fucking heals SP with plus coins and loses SP with minus coins. Just God, do we have to keep jerking Phil Clare off? I get it, Blazing Strike and Unstable E.G.O are cool, but Christ, he's already got enough tools helping him out as is. Anyhow, at 40% SP, he deals 10% damage with plus coins, or at minus 25 or less, he gets the same. Just shoot me, I swear, the twink keeps eating ridiculously good. So where does that leave us? Can I even make a DPR comparison over E.G.Os? Well, not really. Most of them just don't have damage conditionals, and the more recent ones are only just starting to get them. Hence these Fredspin 5s starting to offer them. Do they roll higher than ever before? Also no. Base power over multiple coins, yes, but 4th match Flame Yoshu was already rolling for a 50 or more, so really can't say that either. What I can say after all of that is there are some genuinely shit E.G.Os that need Fredspin 5 to offer percentages over flat values. There are some staple ones that can't really be replaced, especially for Tremor, and there's kinda just everything else that fits some kinda unique niche. To sum up, the main things that have power crept E.G.Os hasn't really been sheer numbers, but more so functionality and use cases. Old E.G.Os did one thing extremely well rather than lots of small things decently well. Most had a line of text to their name for a passive rather than entire paragraphs. A lot of them were more generally targeted to that sinner's lot rather than tailored down to the IDs instead. In that regard, we can say that E.G.Os have become far more niche and specific, but as mentioned, they still do a lot each to the point where any one ID could use them and still see returns now. E.G.Os are a difficult balancing act thanks to all of that, and their sideboardy nature. Heck, in some ways, E.G.Os are balanced by the exclusion of others within their slots. Musou's Tef slot is full of monstrous stuff, just as False Haste slot is. You can't just slot the very best that each sinner has due to slot limitations. And though not every slot is perfect or has fantastic alternatives, I reckon that's what makes E.G.Os as interesting as they are compared to IDs. As something that every sinner has to consider their selection of at all times compared to staring at the latest seasonal upgrades, E.G.Os have largely avoided the creep problems of IDs, at least aren't as aggressively having to handle them. Most of the time you cannot just jam an E.G.O like a square peg into a circle hole and call it a day, and that's why I'm more happy to have covered pretty much all of them in some kind of measure. Most of them still have some kind of use case, even in today's sandbox. Unlike the power crap to hell state of IDs and Limbus company, E.G.Os still remain in a rather healthy spot, with Fredspin 5 only needing to add a couple of lines each. With the exception of the Stew Twink, I honestly am looking forward to next season's offerings. I hope Hole in the Man requires careful play to make work, and isn't just an I win button, like how most of the rest of the seasonal capstones have functioned thus far. Anyhow, thank you for listening in on the video. It's rather long, and I didn't want to revise the script in the end. Setting out, I didn't expect to cover every single bloody E.G.O and make a video longer than the first. That said, if you enjoyed the video, go like it below and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more in the future. I've got a few announcements this time around. Community Discord is open as always. You can find the link below in the video description. We run a lot of community stuff in there, but most notably my Project Moon tabletop RPG system, Fixer's Urban Nightmare tabletop. Past that, I'll be running a donathon to raise some funds for production and projects. The list of goals is here, and reasonably cursed I reckon. At a glimpse though, reaching 150 donated is me ordering an MRE and doing a Steve MRE style review with it. And beyond that, at 250 is a cover of String Theocracy. I wouldn't call myself an amazing singer, but I can hold my own at karaoke I reckon. Besides the main goals, there are smaller stuff per donation, voice work, ID locks, waterboarding, you get the idea. Anyhow, as per any donathon, each dollar thrown increases the stream timer. Aside from that, here's the artist corner once again. If you're an established artist in my Discord server, then in return for sketching one of my OCs, I'll offer you a spot to plug your comms. This time around, we have a few mates and a circle that took me up on the offer. First is FSJ. They're tabling at Comifuro this year and have a bunch of Limbus merch floating around. Their rep decided to sketch out Vix, the second OC I'd ever gotten. Contact them via socials if you need some art done up, otherwise visit their booth during the con. We've got Sleepy returning this time round. They're a Rian-obsessed artist, but took their time to draw E.G.O as a bunny. You can find their comms here or in the description below. Then comes Mobius Overlords, formerly a Rodya addict. Now, I'd say probably an Alyssa one. Anyhow, they need to rest their wrists, but you can reach out on their socials for their comms as well. This time round, they decided to draw Claire as a mermaid. Interesting choice, I would say. Otherwise, if you're a company that wants a sponsored spot in my videos, go contact me via email instead. I received a cursed one from a certain toy company, but Project Moon has far too many kiddos to be advertising those on main. Aside from those, these are my patrons and members, Derp, Ardi, Ane, and Iwa. Thank you as always for continuing to support me and keep the lights on. As for the rest of you, appreciate you tuning in to some second monitor content. Thanks for your time.